So the today's lecture is again the new one in the PPC series, and we'll be talking of loading and scheduling aspects, the principle, and we'll in the future class we'll solve the some of the problems based on the loading, sequencing, and scheduling. So what is loading? So loading is an element of production planning control to assign a specific job to a specific resource that may be a machine or man. Hence, it is a process of converting the operation schedule into the practice. Second definition can be understood like this. Loading is done after testing the capacities of the resource, that is man and machine. In the process of loading, detailed exercise is done to get the data related to complete a job, maximum capacity of the each worker and machine to be utilized. A machine loading chart, which is also known as sometimes Gantt chart, shows the planned utilization of man and machine by allocating the job to machines or the workers as per the priorities or the sequencing which is required or which we have thought of at the time of scheduling. The loading ensure maximum possible utilization of productive facility and avoids the bottleneck in the production so that the production goes very smoothly. It is important to avoid either overloading or underloading a facility, because if you are overloading it, there will be queues, long queues, and if we are underloading it, then that means we are not utilizing the facility to the full extent. Okay, so loading is very important phenomena which is required before starting a production. Now, the purpose or the objectives of loading can be understood like this: to maximize the utilization of resource, to eliminate the bottleneck in the production process, to eliminate the overloading, and to remove the underutilization. Now, what is scheduling then? Scheduling is defined as the assignment of work to the facility with the specification of time and the sequence in which the work is to be done. So that means we decide first we decide the resource, that is man or machine, and then we decide the sequence of the job on that particular machine, and then we will assign the time, at what time the things will start and till what time that machine will be available. So scheduling is actually also known as the time phasing of the loading. The facility may be manpower, machine, or both. So scheduling deals with the orders and machine. It determines which order will be taken up on which machine, in which department, at what time, and by which operator. Okay. So objectives of scheduling are to achieve the required rate of output with a minimum of delay and disruption in the processing. Okay. So there should be no delay or minimum of delay, and there should be no disruption. That means the production should go on. Second objective is to provide the quantities of goods necessary to maintain the finished inventories at levels predetermined to meet the delivery requirement. So our scheduling should be such that we are able to produce the goods at the right time and in the right quantity so that we can meet the commitments of our customer. Next is to have the maximum utilization of resources, that is man, machine, and material, by maintaining a free flow of material along the production line. That means there should not be any disruption on account of material, account of tool, on account of jigs and fixture, like that. Next objective is to prevent the unbalanced allocation of the time among the production department or the work center with a view to eliminate the idle capacity. So that means no facility, it should be overloaded, and it should not be underutilized, because if it is underutilized, then the machine will be lying idle, and the cost of keeping that machine will be high. And the last is to keep the production cost to minimum. So these are the main objectives of scheduling. Now, what are the types of scheduling? There are three types of scheduling we can classify. One is the master scheduling. Master schedule gives a number of units of different products which are to be produced in the whole year. Okay. It gives the unit of production for every month for the different products. So master schedule is based on the basis of the sales forecast, and this is the first step in the production planning. So once the master schedule is prepared, then we do the part scheduling. The part schedules gives the number of units of different parts to be produced for a given product. Okay, suppose in a company we are making 10 products. So for each product, there will be some common parts, some parts will be totally unique. So next we do the part scheduling according to the type of the product or the order we are dealing. The schedule is prepared for a month and it gives the details of production every week. So part schedule is prepared on the basis of the master schedule. Okay. The third is a machine loading schedule. So it is the process of workload allocation to the various machine. This schedule is prepared weekly and it gives the detail of machine loading every week. Now, there are certain principles which are involved on which basis we schedule the things. So 3-4 principles are there. So we'll go one by one, and while solving the numericals, these things will be clear to you. So first principle is principle of the optimum task size. Optimum task size means we should be able to do the maximum possible, so that every time we need not to change the tool, every time we need not to change the jigs and fixture. Okay, so the scheduling needs to tends to achieve its maximum efficiency when the task sizes are smaller and all the tasks are of the same magnitude. Okay, then principle of the optimum production. So we have to decide the optimum quantity of production. So this principle is based on the fact that there will be less idle time. So machine should be utilized to the full extent, less idle time and waiting time. Practically, there should not be any waiting time if all the plant is evenly loaded by the production planner. The scheduling tends to achieve its maximum efficiency when the work is planned so that it imposes equal or even load on the total plant. That means in the plant, if there are number of machines, if 50 machines are there, 50 machines are there. So what you can do, we have to see that all the machines are utilized evenly or maybe with the equal load. Okay. And the third is principle of optimum operation sequence. So it is like this, there should not be any backtracking. So we have to make use of the optimum operation sequence. So it is also known as the principle of flow. Sometimes it is also true that if we sequence the job which needs the same machine setup at a time, so scheduling tends to achieve the maximum efficiency, and the work is planned so that the work centers are normally used in the same sequence. So what are the advantages of scheduling? So they are listed like this, and that scheduling should be planned in such a way that it minimizes the cost of production and less investment for the material and process, minimum material shortage cost, no overloading of men and machines, no underutilization of men and machine, and the rate of production should be good, and the company production rate should be improved, and satisfaction to the employees. So these are the advantages. So there are number of techniques which are used. So we'll be going these first two techniques. This will be only explaining because they are very detailed activities. So this can be discussed as a separate chapter. So let us go one by one. First is bar chart. So bar chart, I think everybody is aware of. It is a pictorial chart which is known as bar chart. It was developed by Gann, and it is used to deal with the complex activities. Okay, so bar chart is probably the oldest one and the simplest one. So this nowadays you can make it manually and using the Microsoft Excel also. A bar chart consists of two coordinate axes. One is the horizontal axis, and this represents the time phase, which is elapsed, and other the vertical axis, which represents the job or activities which are to be performed. So each bar represents one specific job or the activity of the project, The length of the bar will show the time required to complete that job or the activity. So mostly in every project there are some job or activities which can take place concurrently. What does it mean? Suppose you are making a a component, or you are making a scooter. Okay, so for that scooter there is a chassis shop, there is a assembly shop, there is an engine shop. So parallelly the things can go. So when the assembly will come, then only before that every activity should be complete. So that means the things can go concurrently, parallelly they can go. Okay. So in the bar chart, some of the bars in parallel or some overlap each other time wise. Okay. So this you will see here in the activity. You can see here, these are the different jobs or the different activities. So job A started at 0 time or 0 week. This is given in weeks. These are the activities. So it takes 5 weeks. Then parallelly we can start the job B also, which may not be dependent on A, or which might be requiring a different workstation or the machine tool. So it takes the 4 weeks. Okay, but C cannot be started unless and until B is complete. So that means the C dependent on B. So C takes another 5 weeks. So we can draw this chart. Okay. Then the D can be started when A and B are complete, and C is to the extent of 50% it is complete. So 2 weeks are there, but E cannot be started when all these four activities are complete. Okay, so like that you can see the dependence also, and you can see. So if it is the last time, last activity of that particular job, then that means there are total 16 weeks. That will be the time required to complete that product. Okay. So second chart, which is known as a Gantt chart, it is only extension of the bar chart. So this was also developed by Henry Gantt, and the purpose is to provide an immediate comparison between the schedule and reality. So in the bar chart, so we are not able to find the progress. We have to only see. Suppose today we have started, after 5 weeks, the A has to complete. So we have not made any mark on this, that how much work has been completed. But in the bar chart, in the Gantt chart, you can do a immediate comparison between the schedule and the reality. So this is achieved simply by marking the chart, the planned work and the actual progress of work. Okay. The Gantt chart is actually a modified bar chart, as I told, in which the horizontal bars are drawn for each activity in the portion to the time required for completing it. A cursor is usually attached, which can move across the chart to compare between the actual progress and the planned progress. So there are two types of the Gantt chart. One is known as the order or activity progress chart. Another is known as the machine load chart. So here you see the activity is given on the vertical listing. Okay, and this way the time is given on the horizontal. So you see here the activity 1, it requires you see 1.5 weeks, and it is the today the progress is there, so it is complete. But here you see these are the planned. So when we will be putting this cursor is here today. So cursor is here means we have completed this. It is not completed yet. So when it is completed, we will hatch it. We will shade it so that this way we move the cursor to the each activity, and we find out what was the plan and where the progress is going on. Okay. Now there are certain limitations of the Gantt chart. What are these limitations? If the project consists of too many activities, like you are making a you are manufacturing an aeroplane, or you are making a building, so number of activity will be much higher. So it becomes clumsy or difficult to draw the Gantt chart for number of activities. Okay. So due to this, this chart is not very useful for the big projects which consisting of large number of the complex activities. So that is a first and the foremost limitation of the Gantt chart. Second limitation is the chart does not give any data about what exactly is completed and what is not, as chart does not show even between the ones. Okay. Now, as the chart combines plan and schedule, it is difficult to know whether the activity have optional starting dates. Okay. Fourth limitation is the chart does not exhibit the dependency or the interrelationship between the activities also. We cannot plan really that what we can do first and what we have to start later. So Gantt charts are not useful at all for the those projects with the uncertainty in the determination or estimation of the completion time required. So we can conclude that these charts are the charts which are only useful for small size conventional projects, especially construction and manufacturing projects, in which the time estimates can be made with uncertainty. Now, the third one is a PERT chart. So, PERT is a term which is used, is known as a program evaluation review technique. Okay, so we draw a chart based on the number of activities. So, what we do, we first check out what are the different activities. First, they are determined. So, what we do because of the different activities, we have to assign the time also. Okay, so that we can draw the network. It is a network technique. So this method use 3 times estimate for an activity rather than single estimate. What does it mean? It will be clear to you. There are 3 times which use. They are optimistic time, which is denoted by A. So this is the shortest time that the activity will take to complete. There is more than one charge in 100 of the activity in amount of time. So it represents an ideal estimate. Suppose you know that this part is going to be complete in 2 weeks. So it is the most optimistic time. But most likely time, this refers to, it is noted by M. So this refers to the time that would be expected to occur most often if the activities were frequently repeated and exactly the same condition. It is a model time. So that means suppose it takes, as I told, if it takes 10 minutes, that is the most optimistic time. And instead of 10 minutes, if it takes 12 minutes. So that means because of the delays or because of some tool problems, so this will be the most likely. And the third time is the pessimistic time, which is noted by P. So this is the longest time the activity to finish. It is a worst time estimate and represents the time. So it is like this. Suppose the optimist time was 10, most likely time is 12, and pessimistically we say this job in any case cannot be completed before 15 days. Okay, so like that. So there are the 3 type of time estimate: optimistic time, most likely time, and pessimistic time. So typically, the completion of a given activity is assumed to follow a beta distribution. So this is the beta distribution if you see, okay, as shown in figure. The 3 time estimates are reduced to a single time expected time with the weighted average formula. So what we do, we have, you see the A time here and B time here and N time here. It is a, most likely to time. And the expected time. TEI is the expected time of the IS activity. So we suppose we have take 10 as this and we take most likely as 12. So 12 for the 48 and B if we take 50. So we add all these and we divide it by 6. So this will give us the most expected time which will be required to complete that activity. Okay. So PERT is a very good technique. So another technique is a critical path method. We also call it as CPM. So it is observed that network one enumerates many sequence activities from start to end. Suppose you are going to make a room. Okay. So what you will do, you will first have the plan of that room. then you have to have the material, then you have to have the labor, then you have to have the finishing operation. So like that you identify the different activities and you draw a path. You draw a path with the time. That first we'll do this, secondly we do this, thirdly we do this. Then you go on keeping doing that, and you make a chart, a flow chart, and in that you will add up algebraically the the time which is required for each activity. So what happens, we draw the some alternate. So suppose first activity is through this path, second activity is through this path, and third activity is through this path. It is just like this. Suppose you are going from your institute to Sangrur. So there are three paths. Okay. So one path goes the state path, second path goes via village, and third path goes via Bhatpar and like that. So these are the three paths. So you have to evaluate that which path is going to take less time and which path is going to take the more time. So you identify those activities which fall on the path with the longest time. So that will become the critical path. Okay. So this way we identify the activities, though those activities will become the critical activities, and that path will be the critical path. Okay. So this is what I have explained, that it is observed that in a network there can be many sequence of the activities from starting to the end. In each sequence will contain different combinations with different duration. So one of the important objects of the network analysis to know the minimum possible time by which the product can be completed. So this is done by determining the critical path, as I told, that is the sequence of activity with the longest duration. So it is known as a critical path because any delay on that activity lying on this path would cause a delay in the whole project. So we have to identify the critical path. Okay. So in order to quicken the process, the activities lying on the critical path should be taken first. Okay. The activities lying on the non-critical path have some flexibility, and their timings and the extension or delay in starting is not likely to affect the other activities or the final completion. So we say those activity as slack activities. Okay, and those activities time as a slack time. Okay, and should be given in order of their float value. Float value means suppose a particular activity takes say 20 minutes, but if it is complete within 15 minutes, so 5 minutes is the float available with us. But if that activity is going to take the 22 minutes, then 2 minutes will be the slack. Okay. So like that you identify the activities with the slack and float. So CPM method is applied with the notable access to the large scale research project or the construction project, production planning, installation and maintenance, like that. Okay. So what is the difference between PERT and CPM? PERT is an appropriate technique where the time estimates are certain. Okay, and the duration of the activities are measured by the optimistic time, most likely time, pessimistic time. Whereas in the CPM or critical path method is good when the time estimates are found with certainty, that we know that exactly it is going to take so much of time. Suppose we are filling a petrol tank. So by the flow rate of our gun, we can predetermine that according to the capacity, it is going to take so much of time to fill that tank. So we are certain about the time. So in that case, we will follow this in such type of activities. We will follow critical math method, and where we are not clear about the timings, then we follow the PERT. CPM assumes that duration of the every activity is constant, and therefore every activity is critical or not. Now, PERT is concerned with the events which are beginning or ending point of the operation, while CPM is concerned with the activity. Okay, so PERT is event oriented. PERT is PERT technique is event oriented, and CPM technique is activity oriented. So it is a basic first difference. Second is PERT is suitable for a non-repetitive projects, while CPM is designed for the repetitive project. So PERT is every time we are doing a constructing a hospital or constructing a aerospace center or maybe a mall. So every time we are doing a new job. So for those kind of activities, the PERT is more suitable. But CPM is more suitable where we are doing a repetitive kind of work. Third is the PERT can be analyzed statistically, whereas CPM cannot be analyzed statistically. Okay, so you can make use of some distributions and do all those things. Okay? So number four is the PERT is not concerned with the relationship between time and cost. Okay, so we are more concerned only for the time, whereas the CPM establishes a relationship between time and cost. Note that the cost is proportionate to time. So if an activity is going to take much time, so that means it is going to take more cost. Okay, isn't it? So activity CPM is cost oriented. So these are the four main differences. So I think you got some idea about what is loading, what is scheduling, what are the techniques, and what are the principles of scheduling. So we will be doing in the next class what is loading, how to load a machine. Then we will be also learning what are the principle of sequencing and what are the sequencing methods and the scheduling methods. So we will try to take one more session on this PPC. So thank you very much for a patient hearing.
Thank you so much, sir.